cafe was quiet in the early morning. Sunlight spilled through the windows, touching the wooden tables and chairs. The air smelled of fresh bread, coffee, and something faintly sweet. The waitress moved between tables with a calm and steady rhythm, carrying trays of drinks and plates of food. She had worked here for many years, and the routine was familiar and comforting. She knew which customers wanted their usual coffee, who liked a little extra cream, and who preferred sugar on the side. She was a quiet woman, not one to speak unless spoken to. Her presence was gentle, almost invisible to those who only looked on the surface. People saw her serving, cleaning, and taking orders, but very few noticed the small details of her life or her quiet smiles. There was a softness in her eyes, a kind of warmth that made customers feel welcomed without words. She never sought attention, and the world seemed to move around her without realizing the depth she held inside. Even in the busiest hours, when the cafe was filled with the chatter of customers and the clatter of dishes, she moved with a calm focus. Her hands were steady, her steps measured. She could carry a tray of steaming drinks without spilling a drop, and she seemed to know instinctively how to balance the weight of dishes in one hand while opening doors with the other. There was a rhythm to her movements, almost like a dance that only she could hear. It was a rhythm that went unnoticed by most, but it was part of her nature, part of who she was. The cafe had a small piano in the corner, an old wooden thing with keys slightly worn from years of use. It had been there long before she had started working, and few people ever played it. Sometimes, late at night when the cafe was empty and the quiet of the evening settled in, she would sit at the piano. Her fingers would hover over the keys for a moment, and then she would play softly. Not loudly, not to show anyone, but because the music seemed to come from a place deep inside her. The notes were gentle at first, a quiet melody that echoed softly in the empty room. She would close her eyes and let the music guide her hands, letting each note flow naturally. No one knew that she had this talent. Her coworkers thought of her as a polite and efficient waitress, the kind of person who never caused trouble and always did her job without complaint. Some customers thought of her as friendly but shy. Only she knew the small truths of her heart, the way music could lift her spirit, make her forget the long hours and tired feet. She had loved the piano since she was a child, spending hours in the small music room of her school, practicing until her fingers ached and her mind felt free. Life had pulled her in different directions, but she never stopped loving music. Her routine often involved small moments of private joy. When she cleared a table, she might tap out a rhythm on the edge with her fingers, a silent song only she could hear. When she carried coffee through the bustling morning crowd, she sometimes hummed softly, a tune that slipped past unnoticed by those around her. These were tiny, secret pieces of her life, things that nourished her without the need for anyone to see or approve. In the quiet corners of her world, she felt alive in a way that no one else could fully understand. Some days, when the cafe was less crowded, she would take a few minutes to sit at the piano during her break. She would let her fingers dance lightly over the keys, playing melodies she remembered from her childhood or improvising her own. The music was gentle but full of emotion, a language she used when words were not enough. She often imagined that someone might hear it and feel the story she was telling, even if no one ever did. There was a satisfaction in knowing that she could create something beautiful, something that existed purely because she wanted it to. Despite her quiet nature, she had a way of noticing the little things in people's lives. She remembered a regular customer who always ordered a muffin and tea at exactly 10 o'clock in the morning, and she would have it ready before he even asked. She noticed when someone looked sad or tired and would offer a small smile or a kind word. She had an intuition for moods and emotions, a sensitivity that came from listening and observing rather than speaking. People felt comforted by her presence, even if they did not know why. The cafe itself was a place of small stories, of fleeting moments that passed quickly but left an impression. She witnessed birthdays celebrated with laughter, quiet conversations over coffee, and brief exchanges of kindness between strangers. She saw people come and go, each carrying their own worries and joys, and she observed without judgment. There was a rhythm to the life of the cafe, a gentle pulse that matched her own steady heartbeat. In the evenings, when the rush was over and the last customers had left, she often stayed behind. She would wipe down tables, wash dishes, and then make her way to the piano. The world outside grew quiet, and the cafe felt like her own private sanctuary. She would sit down, hands resting lightly on the keys, and let the music flow. Sometimes the melodies were soft and sad, reflecting the weariness of the day. Other times, they were bright and lively, celebrating small victories or moments of happiness. The piano was a friend, a companion that listened without judgment and responded to the smallest hint of emotion. She never thought of herself as someone who would perform for an audience. Music was her refuge, her secret world. She was content to play for herself, to let the notes carry her away from the mundane tasks of daily life. Yet there was a part of her that wondered what it would feel like to share this side of herself with others, to let someone else experience the music that lived in her heart. It was a quiet curiosity, one she kept tucked away alongside her daily routines. Her co-workers occasionally noticed her interest in the piano. They would see her fingers hover over the keys, or hear a soft hum while she worked. Some teased her gently, suggesting that she might be better off performing in front of people rather than waiting tables. She would smile quietly, but the thought of playing for a crowd made her anxious. She was used to the comfort of solitude, the freedom to make mistakes without anyone watching. The idea of being seen and judged was intimidating, even if deep down she longed to share her gift. The cafe owner had known her for years and appreciated her dedication and calm presence. He had noticed her talent occasionally, hearing the faint music drifting from the piano in the evenings. He never pushed her to perform, respecting her privacy, but he would sometimes leave a note of encouragement. "Your music is special, don't forget it." These small gestures mattered to her more than words could express. They were reminders that her talent had value, even if it remained hidden from the world. Life continued in this quiet rhythm. She moved through her days with grace and diligence, never seeking recognition or praise. Her music remained a personal treasure, a source of joy and solace. She lived in the intersection of the ordinary and the extraordinary, quietly nurturing a talent that was waiting for the right moment to shine. Each day was a mix of routine tasks and small glimpses of beauty, moments that would later become the foundation of a story no one could have predicted. And so, the waitress went about her life, serving, cleaning, smiling, and playing her secret songs. The cafe was her stage in the quietest sense, a place where she could be herself without expectation. She did not yet know that her world was about to change, that the music she had kept hidden for so long would soon captivate hearts and minds in a way she had never imagined. The first part of her story was simple and unassuming, but beneath the surface, something extraordinary was quietly taking shape. The cafe had become a hub of activity as the week went on. People were chatting about a special event that was planned for the weekend. Local musicians were invited to perform, and the place buzzed with excitement. Decorations were being put up, small lights hung around the windows, and the smell of freshly baked pastries filled the air. Customers were curious, peeking in to see how everything would look, and the staff moved about preparing for the big day. Among them, the quiet waitress continued her usual work, her movements steady and precise, her eyes watching the world around her. She had overheard a conversation between the cafe owner and one of the regulars. They needed a pianist to fill in for a moment during the event, someone who could play something gentle while the musicians prepared. The thought made her heart race. Her hands, which had spent years carrying trays and cleaning tables, itched to touch the piano keys. She hesitated, feeling a mix of excitement and fear. She had never played in front of people before. Her music had always been a secret, a comfort in the quiet of evenings when the cafe was empty. The idea of performing for an audience both thrilled and terrified her. For the rest of the day, she could barely focus on her tasks. Every time she passed the piano in the corner, she paused, imagining the sound of the notes filling the room. She thought about the melodies she had practiced alone, the small improvisations she had created during quiet nights. Her fingers twitched as if remembering the rhythms and the emotions that the music carried. She knew she could do it, but the thought of all eyes watching her was daunting. That evening, after the last customers had left and the cafe grew quiet, she approached the piano. The keys were worn and familiar under her fingers. She played a few notes softly, testing her memory and feeling the flow of the music. Each note seemed to calm her nerves, reminding her why she loved this so much. The sound was gentle but strong, full of emotion, and she felt a sense of connection she had not experienced in days filled with serving and cleaning. In that moment, she imagined herself playing not for herself alone, but for others who might feel the music as she did. The next morning, she told the cafe owner she would try to play for the event. His face lit up with encouragement, and he offered simple advice. Play what you feel. Don't worry about mistakes. Just let it come naturally. His words were simple, but they carried a weight of confidence that helped her believe she could do it. She spent the day moving through her regular duties, but in her mind, she ran through melodies, imagining the notes and rhythms, imagining the sound filling the cafe. Over the next few days, she practiced in small moments whenever she could. Sometimes it was only a few notes during a quiet break. Other times, she sat at the piano for longer stretches, playing entire pieces softly, feeling the music guide her hands. She learned to breathe with the music, to let it flow naturally, and to trust that the audience would feel what she wanted them to. She was not interested in impressing anyone with speed or complexity. She wanted to share a piece of her heart through the sound of the piano. The cafe staff began to notice small changes in her demeanor. She moved with a quiet energy, her shoulders a little straighter, her eyes a little brighter. Some teased her gently, asking if she was going to be a star during the event. She smiled politely, avoiding direct answers, but inside, her mind was filled with anticipation and anxiety. The thought of performing for real people, seeing their faces as they listened, made her both nervous and excited. It was a new kind of challenge, one that pushed her beyond the comfortable routine she had lived in for years. She also found herself observing the other performers who were scheduled for the event. A few came to the cafe to practice, tuning their instruments and discussing pieces with the owner. She watched quietly, learning from their confidence and the way they moved with their music. She noticed the subtle ways they communicated with each other, the small gestures and nods that showed understanding and timing. She realized that performing was not only about the notes but also about presence, about connecting with others and creating a shared experience. This thought encouraged her, giving her a sense of purpose beyond her private practice. The day before the event, she stayed late after her shift. The cafe was empty, and the evening light created long shadows across the wooden floor. She sat at the piano, playing softly at first, then letting the music grow. Her fingers moved with confidence now, the rhythm steady and assured. She imagined the audience watching, feeling their anticipation, and she let that feeling guide her. The music became stronger, more expressive, carrying her emotions across the room. She felt a sense of calm and determination she had never experienced before. She knew she was ready. When the morning of the event arrived, the cafe was alive with energy. Staff moved about preparing tables, setting up decorations, and arranging instruments. She felt a nervous flutter in her chest, but she focused on the piano in the corner. The keys seemed to call to her, a familiar and comforting presence amidst the excitement. Customers and visitors began to arrive, curious about the event and the promise of music. The cafe was filled with chatter and laughter, and the air seemed charged with anticipation. As the event began, the musicians took their places, tuning their instruments and greeting the audience. She remained in the background, her hands folded nervously, waiting for the right moment. When the cafe owner gave her a small nod, she understood it was her turn. She walked to the piano, her heart racing, and sat down. The audience's chatter dimmed slightly as people noticed her presence. She felt their eyes, but she reminded herself of the advice she had received. Play what you feel. Let the music guide you. Her fingers touched the keys gently, testing the notes. She took a deep breath, letting the sound flow from her heart. The first notes were soft and tentative, a quiet introduction, but gradually, she found her rhythm. The music grew stronger, more confident, filling the space with melodies that were both gentle and powerful. She closed her eyes, letting the sound carry her, and soon the audience was drawn in, listening with rapt attention. The soft beginning became a rich and emotional story, a language that needed no words, speaking directly to anyone willing to listen. As she played, she noticed the faces around her. Some looked surprised, their eyes widening as they realized the depth of her talent. Others leaned forward, captivated by the beauty of the music. A few whispered to each other, commenting on how unexpected and remarkable it was. She felt a mix of emotions herself: nervousness, joy, and a growing sense of pride. This was no longer just practice or private enjoyment. This was a connection with the world, a moment of truth where her music had the power to touch others. The performance continued, each note building on the last, carrying her confidence and emotion to the listeners. She had forgotten her fear entirely, absorbed in the music, feeling every key beneath her fingers. She played not to impress but to share, to communicate what words could not. The room became quiet except for the piano, every ear attuned to the story unfolding through the sound. It was a transformation, a moment where the ordinary life of a quiet waitress merged with the extraordinary gift she had kept hidden for so long. By the end of the performance, the audience was spellbound. The notes lingered in the air, and a hush fell over the cafe. People looked at each other, amazed, and then slowly, a round of applause began. It started quietly, tentative, and then grew louder, filling the room with energy and admiration. She looked up from the piano, her eyes meeting the faces around her. For the first time, she realized how her music had affected others, how it could reach beyond the quiet corners of her life. She smiled softly, feeling a mix of relief, happiness, and wonder. After she left the piano, the musicians and staff came to congratulate her. Some hugged her, others shook her hand warmly. The cafe owner smiled proudly, telling her she had done wonderfully. The regular customers who had seen her before in her usual quiet role looked at her with new respect and amazement. For the first time, the waitress understood that her talent was not just for herself, that sharing it could create joy, surprise, and connection. She had stepped beyond her routine, faced her fear, and discovered a new dimension of her life. The ordinary world she had known was now touched by something extraordinary, and she was at the center of it. The day of the event had arrived, and the cafe was filled with energy. People had come from different parts of the town, curious about the music and the promise of a special evening. The air smelled of coffee, pastries, and a faint hint of candles. Lights twinkled around the windows, giving the room a warm glow. Every table was full, and the chatter of excitement filled the space. The quiet waitress moved among the crowd, taking orders and making sure everything ran smoothly, though her mind was far away, thinking of the piano and the music she would soon play. She felt a nervous flutter in her stomach, a mix of fear and excitement. Her hands, which had spent years carrying trays and handling dishes, itched to touch the keys of the piano. She had practiced for days, letting the melodies flow through her fingers, but performing in front of a live audience was entirely different. She worried about mistakes, about forgetting notes, about the eyes and ears of strangers upon her. And yet, beneath the worry, there was a deep excitement, a sense that something extraordinary was about to happen. The musicians began their set, playing lively tunes that drew smiles and applause from the audience. The waitress stayed in the background, observing quietly, watching the flow of music, the energy of the crowd, and feeling her own heart beating faster. She knew that soon it would be her turn. The piano in the corner seemed to call to her, a familiar presence amidst the bustling crowd. She reminded herself to breathe, to trust her fingers and her heart, and to let the music speak for her. When the cafe owner gave her a small nod, signaling it was time, she walked to the piano, her heart pounding. The room seemed to grow quieter as people noticed her moving toward the instrument. She felt every pair of eyes on her, and for a moment her confidence wavered. But she took a deep breath, resting her hands gently on the keys, and allowed herself to feel the music instead of thinking about the audience. The first notes were soft, tentative, like a whisper in the air. She let them grow slowly, feeling the rhythm, finding the melody she had practiced countless times in private. Each note carried a piece of her heart, an emotion she had kept hidden for years. She closed her eyes and let the music guide her, forgetting everything but the flow of sound and the feeling it brought. At first, the audience seemed uncertain. They leaned forward, curious, listening to the soft melody, trying to understand the story behind it. And then, slowly, they began to notice the depth and skill of her playing. The notes moved with grace and power, gentle yet commanding attention. People exchanged glances, eyes widening, whispers escaping as they realized that this quiet waitress had a talent far beyond anything they expected. The music grew, more expressive and confident. Her fingers moved over the keys with precision and emotion, each note telling a story. Some melodies were tender and soft, reflecting quiet emotions and memories. Others were strong and lively, carrying excitement and joy. The audience was drawn in, forgetting their conversations, their phones, their worries. All attention was on the music, and all ears were attuned to the story she was telling. She noticed the reactions around her. People were leaning in, captivated. Some had tears in their eyes, moved by the beauty and emotion of her playing. Others whispered to each other in astonishment, commenting on the unexpected brilliance they were witnessing. A few regular customers, who had seen her only as the gentle waitress serving coffee and clearing tables, looked at her in a new light, amazed at the hidden depth of talent they had never noticed before. Her confidence grew as the music flowed. She had feared the audience, the possibility of mistakes, the weight of expectations. But now, as the piano sang under her fingers, those fears melted away. She played with her whole heart, letting the music carry her and the audience along. The rhythm became more intricate, the melodies more expressive, yet natural and effortless. The cafe seemed to fade around her, leaving only the sound, the emotion, and the connection between her and the listeners. The performance was not just about skill. It was about presence and feeling. She felt a bond forming with every person in the room. They were listening, reacting, feeling what she felt, even without words. The piano became a bridge, connecting her quiet world to theirs. She was no longer just a waitress. She was a storyteller, sharing a part of herself through the music she had kept secret for so long. Time seemed to stretch as she played, each piece flowing into the next, the audience completely absorbed. She noticed the youngest children staring wide-eyed, the elderly leaning in with smiles, and the regular customers shaking their heads in amazement. Every note carried a little piece of her life, her dreams, her emotions, and the room responded with attention, admiration, and awe. As she reached the final piece, the music swelled, powerful yet controlled, filling every corner of the cafe. She felt a surge of emotion, a release of all the anxiety, all the quiet moments of practice, all the waiting and wondering if she could share this part of herself. The notes soared and softened, danced and lingered, carrying the full range of her feeling. When the last note faded, there was a pause, a moment of silence that seemed to hold the audience in awe, allowing the power of the music to settle in their hearts. Then the applause began. It was quiet at first, almost hesitant, as people realized what they had just experienced. And then it grew, louder and stronger, filling the room with warmth, admiration, and respect. Some people stood, clapping enthusiastically, while others remained seated, their eyes wide and shining with emotion. The waitress smiled softly, tears of relief and happiness threatening to fall. She had done it. She had shared her music, her heart, and the world had listened. The musicians came over to congratulate her, shaking her hand and praising her talent. The cafe owner beamed, pride evident in his expression. The regular customers who had known her as a quiet, gentle presence now looked at her with newfound respect. They whispered among themselves, expressing amazement at the skill and emotion she had revealed. She felt a deep sense of satisfaction, not from recognition, but from the knowledge that she had connected with others through her music, that her quiet world had touched theirs. After the performance, she returned to her usual tasks, but everything had changed. She moved through the cafe with a new awareness, noticing the smiles, the nods, the lingering admiration. People approached her to thank her, to tell her how beautiful the music was, how it had moved them in ways they could not describe. She listened quietly, grateful, feeling a warmth that came from sharing something truly personal and meaningful. As the night drew to a close, she sat at the piano one last time, fingers brushing the keys softly. The cafe was mostly empty now, the lights dimmed, the energy settled. She played a gentle melody, not for an audience, but for herself, for the joy of music and the calm it brought. She reflected on the journey of the day, the nervousness, the preparation, the courage to step forward, and the incredible connection she had felt. The music was still her secret in a way, but now it was a secret that others had been invited to glimpse, to feel, and to remember. She knew that this was only the beginning. The experience had opened a door to possibilities she had never imagined. The quiet waitress had revealed a hidden power, a gift that could not be contained, and for the first time, she understood that sharing it could bring joy not just to herself, but to everyone who listened. The cafe had been the stage for a moment of transformation, and she had stepped into it with courage, grace, and a heart full of music. The crowd had witnessed something extraordinary, and she had discovered that her own life, once ordinary and quiet, held the potential for something truly remarkable. The music had ended, and for a moment, the cafe was silent. The audience sat in a stunned stillness, as if trying to process what they had just experienced. The quiet waitress remained at the piano, hands resting lightly on the keys, feeling a wave of emotion sweep through her. She had shared a part of herself, something she had kept hidden for years, and the effect was more powerful than she had imagined. The notes still lingered in the air, leaving a trace of the story she had told through sound. Then the applause began. It started softly, tentative, as the listeners tried to show their appreciation. Slowly, it grew louder, filling the room with energy and admiration. Some stood, clapping with enthusiasm, while others remained seated, their eyes wide with amazement. The sound of approval washed over her, a mixture of relief, pride, and joy. She had feared the audience, feared failure, but now she saw that the music had spoken for her, that it had reached the hearts of everyone in the room. People whispered to each other, sharing their astonishment. "I never expected that," one said quietly. "She's incredible," another added. Regular customers, who had always seen her as a quiet, gentle waitress, looked at her with new eyes. They realized they had underestimated her, and the surprise was almost tangible. Some people pulled out their phones, capturing moments of the performance, eager to share this unexpected discovery with friends and family. It was as if a hidden world had been revealed, a talent that had lived quietly in plain sight. Her coworkers came over, smiling and congratulating her. Some hugged her, others shook her hand warmly. They spoke of the courage it had taken to step forward, the skill and emotion she had shown, and the way the audience had responded. She listened quietly, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. The recognition was welcome, but what touched her most was the understanding that the music had connected with people, that it had moved them in ways words could not. The cafe owner approached, his expression full of pride. "You were amazing," he said simply. "I always knew you had something special, but tonight, everyone else could see it too." His words were gentle, but they carried the weight of years of observation and quiet encouragement. She smiled, feeling both humbled and grateful. It was a validation not just of her skill, but of the dedication and love she had put into her music over the years. As the crowd began to settle, the audience members approached her one by one. Some offered compliments, others shared how the music had made them feel. One elderly woman explained that it reminded her of a memory from long ago, a song her mother had played when she was a child. A young man confessed that he had been going through a difficult time, and her music had brought him a sense of peace he had not felt in weeks. Each story touched her, each reaction a testament to the power of sharing something deeply personal. She noticed the children who had been in the audience, their eyes shining with wonder. Some mimicked the motions of her hands on the piano, imagining themselves playing as well. A little boy tugged at his mother's sleeve and whispered, "I want to play like her one day." She smiled, realizing that her performance had inspired more than just admiration. It had sparked curiosity and dreams. The idea that her music could reach across generations, touch hearts, and ignite imaginations filled her with a sense of purpose she had never fully understood before. The musicians who had performed earlier came over to express their admiration. They praised not just her talent, but the courage it had taken to play in front of a live audience for the first time. They spoke of her expression, the emotion in each note, the confidence that grew as the performance progressed. She listened, absorbing their words, feeling a connection with them that extended beyond the music. They were colleagues now, fellow artists who recognized the dedication and heart that went into every piece she had played. As the event continued, more and more people approached, asking about her background, curious to know how someone so quiet had such extraordinary skill. She spoke softly, sharing small pieces of her journey, from childhood practice sessions to late nights at the piano in the cafe. She explained that music had always been a refuge, a place where she could express herself when words were not enough. The audience listened, captivated by both the story and the person behind the music. It was a moment of connection, where admiration for her talent merged with understanding of her humanity. The atmosphere in the cafe was electric, yet warm. People lingered, reluctant to leave, discussing the performance and the impact it had on them. Conversations revolved around the surprise and joy of discovering hidden talent in someone so ordinary at first glance. There was a sense of community, a shared experience that brought people together in appreciation of something beautiful and unexpected. The quiet waitress, once unnoticed, was now the center of admiration and respect, not because she sought it, but because she had shared something true and heartfelt. She felt a deep sense of gratitude for the support and encouragement she had received. Her coworkers, the cafe owner, the musicians, and even the audience members had all contributed to an environment that allowed her to reveal her talent. She realized that her courage had been strengthened by the kindness and belief of those around her, and that the experience was a testament to the power of encouragement and understanding. It was not just the music that had moved people, but the act of stepping forward, of trusting herself and others. As the night drew to a close, the cafe slowly emptied. People left with smiles, with stories to tell, and with a memory of a performance that had touched them deeply. She remained behind, sitting at the piano one last time, letting her fingers play softly. The notes were gentle, reflective, a quiet celebration of the moment and all that it had brought. She felt a sense of peace, knowing that she had shared something meaningful, and that the world had responded with appreciation and emotion. She thought about how ordinary her life had seemed before this night. The quiet days of serving coffee and clearing tables had been familiar and comfortable, but now they were infused with new possibility. She understood that her music had always been a gift, but that gift had the power to reach beyond herself, to touch hearts and inspire others. The realization brought both humility and excitement, a sense that the journey had only just begun. In the days that followed, the event remained a topic of conversation in the town. People spoke of the quiet waitress who had stunned everyone with her piano playing. Some returned to the cafe, hoping to see her again, to hear her play once more. She continued her work, but there was a subtle change in the way she moved through her day. She carried herself with quiet confidence, aware of her ability to impact others through her talent. Her music had become more than a private refuge. It was now a bridge connecting her to the world. The performance had shown her the power of stepping beyond fear and sharing what she loved. She understood that talent alone was not enough. Courage and the willingness to reveal oneself were equally important. Her journey was still unfolding, and she knew there would be challenges and moments of doubt. But the experience had given her a sense of strength, a reminder that even the quietest person could create a profound impact when they trusted themselves and their gifts. Sitting at the piano one evening, long after the event, she reflected on the reactions of the crowd. She remembered the wide eyes, the whispered amazement, the tears, and the smiles. She realized that her music had created a shared memory, a connection that would linger in the hearts of those who had listened. It was a moment of beauty and human connection that went beyond words, and she felt honored to have been part of it. The cafe, once a place of routine and quiet work, had become a stage for something extraordinary, and she had stepped into it with grace and courage. Her life would continue, filled with ordinary tasks and quiet moments, but now there was a new dimension, a sense of purpose and potential. She knew that she had discovered something important about herself, and that the world had responded with openness and admiration. The quiet waitress had revealed a hidden strength, a talent that could inspire, comfort, and connect people. And in that realization, she found a profound sense of fulfillment, knowing that her music could touch lives and leave a lasting impression. After the remarkable performance, life for the quiet waitress began to change, though not in dramatic ways. Her days at the cafe continued, serving coffee, clearing tables, and attending to customers. But there was a new awareness in the way people looked at her. Regulars smiled with a subtle recognition, staff greeted her with a quiet admiration, and even strangers seemed to sense there was something unique about her. She moved through the cafe with the same gentle calm as before, but now there was a sense of purpose and quiet confidence in her movements. The impact of her performance lingered in the town. People who had attended the event spoke of it to friends and family, sharing the story of the quiet waitress who had amazed everyone with her piano playing. Some returned to the cafe, hoping to see her again, not just to be served coffee, but to glimpse the person who had created something so moving. The atmosphere in the cafe shifted slightly. There was more curiosity, more appreciation, and a subtle excitement that had not been there before. Despite the attention, she remained humble. She did not seek recognition or praise, nor did she allow the admiration to change who she was. She understood that her music was not about fame. It was about expression, about sharing a part of herself with the world. She continued to practice quietly in the evenings, exploring new melodies and refining old ones, letting the piano guide her fingers as it always had. The music remained a source of joy and peace, a companion that had now become part of her daily life in a new and meaningful way. Occasionally, she received invitations to perform at other small events in town. Local gatherings, charity events, and even school programs reached out to her, expressing interest in having her play. At first, the idea of performing outside the cafe made her nervous. But each time she played, she discovered that her fear lessened and her confidence grew. The music flowed more naturally, the connection with the audience deepened, and she realized that sharing her gift brought fulfillment beyond anything she had imagined. Her coworkers and the cafe owner continued to support her. They encouraged her to accept invitations, offering reassurance and practical help when needed. The camaraderie among the staff strengthened, as they celebrated her talent without envy or competition. They understood that her music was a part of who she was, and they valued her contributions to the cafe both as a diligent worker and as an artist. This support made her feel appreciated and safe, allowing her to explore her potential without fear of judgment. As the weeks passed, she noticed a subtle transformation within herself. She walked with a lighter step, smiled more readily, and felt a growing sense of confidence in her abilities. The once hidden talent that had been a private refuge now became a bridge to the world. Each performance, no matter how small, reminded her of the power of courage and the importance of sharing what was meaningful. She realized that stepping forward, even in the face of fear, could create experiences that resonated with others in ways she had never anticipated. The community began to recognize her not only as a capable waitress but also as a talented musician. People expressed admiration and respect, sometimes approaching her to ask questions about how she learned, what inspired her music, and what it felt like to perform. She responded with gentle honesty, sharing pieces of her journey without exaggeration. She spoke of long nights of practice, the joy of discovering melodies, and the comfort music had always provided her. Her authenticity resonated, and people felt a genuine connection to her story. One evening, after a small local gathering where she had performed, she walked home under the soft glow of streetlights. The cool air carried the faint hum of distant music, and she reflected on how far she had come. The quiet moments of practice, the courage to step forward, and the support of those around her had all contributed to a transformation she could not have predicted. She felt a deep sense of gratitude for the journey, understanding that her music had become both a personal sanctuary and a way to touch the lives of others. In the cafe, she continued to find joy in her daily work. Serving customers, preparing drinks, and maintaining the space gave her a sense of purpose and structure. Yet, intertwined with these ordinary tasks was the extraordinary presence of her music. She sometimes played quietly for herself during breaks, letting the piano carry her thoughts and emotions. On days when she felt uncertain or tired, the music provided comfort, a reminder of her abilities and the moments of connection she had experienced. The reactions of the audience, colleagues, and community remained a source of inspiration. She remembered the wide eyes, the whispered admiration, and the smiles of those who had listened to her performance. Each memory reinforced her confidence and reminded her that her talent had the power to touch hearts. She understood that music was a universal language, capable of expressing what words often could not. This realization gave her a renewed sense of purpose, a motivation to continue growing and sharing her gift. As time went on, she also discovered new opportunities for collaboration. Other musicians invited her to play alongside them, combining their instruments with her piano to create richer, more complex pieces. She embraced these experiences with openness and curiosity, learning from others while contributing her own voice. Each collaboration deepened her understanding of music and strengthened the bonds between her and the community of artists around her. Despite the growing recognition, she remained grounded. She never lost sight of the joy that music brought her personally, the private moments when she could express herself without expectation. She continued to approach her work at the cafe with the same diligence and care, understanding that her life was a balance of ordinary tasks and extraordinary moments. This balance allowed her to remain humble, authentic, and connected to the world around her. Her story began to inspire others in quiet ways. People who had once underestimated themselves or hidden their own talents found courage in her example. They saw that even someone who appeared ordinary could possess extraordinary abilities, and that sharing those abilities could create meaningful connections. Her journey became a subtle reminder that courage, passion, and persistence could transform not only one's own life, but also the lives of others. One evening, she sat at the piano after the cafe had closed, playing a soft melody that reflected the calm of the night. She thought about the journey from a quiet, unnoticed waitress to someone who had shared a hidden talent with the world. The journey had not been easy, filled with moments of doubt and fear, but it had been rewarding beyond measure. The music flowed freely under her fingers, carrying her thoughts, emotions, and dreams. She smiled, feeling a profound sense of contentment, knowing that she had found her place in the world through her music. Looking ahead, she felt both excitement and serenity. There were still challenges, new opportunities, and unknown paths to explore, but she approached them with the confidence that had grown within her. The quiet waitress had become a musician who understood the value of sharing her heart, of connecting with others, and of embracing her own potential. Her life was no longer defined solely by routine. It was enriched by the music she played, the connections she fostered, and the courage she had discovered within herself. In the end, she realized that true fulfillment came not from recognition alone, but from the joy of expressing oneself, the impact of connecting with others, and the satisfaction of embracing one's gifts. She continued to live each day with grace, humility, and passion, serving coffee and playing piano, quietly shaping a life that balanced the ordinary and the extraordinary. The cafe remained her home, the piano her companion, and the music her voice, carrying her story forward and touching the hearts of everyone who had the privilege to listen.